Aboos! It's the beginning of the new year, and there's a trend on social media where people are posting themselves in 2016. It got me thinking about the last 10 years and who I was around, and ultimately who I am today. I made so many mistakes over the past decade that I have become so grateful for because of the lessons that built me up to be the person I show up as today. There was a time I struggled to live for myself. I lived for other people. I was a people pleaser to a T. I lived for a future that was uncertain because it all depended on the person next to me, not who I wanted to be. When I was forced to be alone after this period of my life, it was difficult for me to imagine my future without the security of someone else beside me. But it was a reality that I needed to face, learning how to be by myself without being lonely, who I am when no one is around, and silently questioning who I surround myself with and whether they're too self-aware like me. So if you've been struggling with being influenced by your social media, by your family, by friends, making decisions that seem to be bettering other people around you but yourself, here's some thoughts that I've had at the start of 2026, looking back on my 20s. Family doesn't have to be the only support system you have, but community is important. When you're young and don't have control over the situation, you can regulate yourself as much as possible so you don't become a product of your environment. Familial relationships don't have to last forever if you don't want it to, but people have the ability to change, especially when they lose something important to them. Family may represent permanent connection through blood, but your relationship with them is not permanent. When I was semi-old enough, at 16, 17 years old, I removed myself from the situation by moving out of my family's apartment and living with friends at a nearby university. I didn't see much of my immediate family anyway. My mom was starting her flight attending career, my brothers continued down their career path and studies, and my dad had his own demons to fight. But this was an experience that I was happy to have had because I believe it helped me gain independence and perspective on what I needed to work on as I matured. When you're an adult, you have the ability to create your own support system, including your family or not including them. That's your choice. Even up to today, my relationship with my family isn't perfect, but it's exactly what I need when I need it to be: familiar, comforting, and full of good food and stories. As an adult, I have the ability to connect with my family when I can and show up for them as much as I am able to, while also being able to maintain a boundary with them. I may make a video about maintaining boundaries, saying no, and how to break certain bonds that you don't need, so let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Because we don't get to choose the family that we're raised with, but as adults, we can choose who we want in our support system. It may not be easy to cut out certain connections, but if you believe at the end of the day it would serve you and your mindset better, then by all means, cut them out. Environments shape who you become. The company you keep is important. If the people around you don't have anything nice to say about you, you don't have to keep their company. There are special situations, and I'll give you an example where you don't have control over the environment, but you have control over yourself and your reactions. Like when I was young, I would be insulted by the adults in my family, mostly my uncles, that would genuinely impinge on my self-confidence, body image, and my overall identity because I was going through puberty, high hormones, and as you can imagine, I was extremely sensitive. It was difficult to avoid them in the situations because they were family and I was too young, too small, and too weak to fight back against the berating. But as you mature, you're able to take yourself out of those situations and choose the people and the environment you're in. You're susceptible to the influence of others, choosing to spend money at the bar after a busy dinner shift as a server, maybe going to a cafe and studying with other classmates. But you also have the ability to say no, to set boundaries for any reason whatsoever. It could be financial, physical, mental. It could just be plain no for no's sake. Yes, sometimes it's hard to break a relationship off with family, romantic interest, or a friend, but it's possible and necessary when a boundary or even multiple boundaries are not being considered. This is called disrespect. When someone disrespects you or anyone else, you have the ability and free will to speak up. For me, if I saw anyone disrespect anyone I loved to their face behind their back, I would say something. or I would remove myself from the situation, whatever the moment calls for. The only thing you can control is yourself and your reactions. The more that I reacted to other people's comments and toxicity, the more they would hurl insults and laugh in my face, attempting to disturb my peace, wanting the satisfaction of a blown-up reaction or for me to prove them right, that I was just as toxic or even more so than they were. The best thing you can do is shrug it off. Walk away and find people who support you and will show up for you even when you can't. Something that has helped me throughout my 20s is journaling. Talking myself through situations that seem out of my control and establishing control over my own emotions and allowing myself to walk away from the situation with a clear mind and a refreshed outlook on things. I'm regretful of some things that I've said and done in the past, and I definitely needed time to heal and just be alone to think about those things that I can't take back. Like I've said and will continue to say, mistakes are moments created by actions that we learn from. I would like to say I've changed for the better, not just for my personal peace, but for the others around me as well. And based off of that, I understood that people will show up the way they genuinely are. Nothing you do and nothing you say can change them. I've seen people on Reddit and content creators say that when people show you who they are, believe them. This was something very difficult for me to learn personally because I like to believe in the best in others, even when they have shown me absolutely nothing that tells me that I should give them the benefit of the doubt. It's okay to separate from people who are chaotic or don't align with your personal values, or even ask you to make sacrifices for their benefit without even thinking of the consequences that you might have to bear. So I don't know if it's obvious by now or not, but I kind of went through a lot in the past decade. Some would say even traumatizing events. And no, I don't mean the kind of trauma that I was just slightly inconvenienced by, but those are story times for another time. So moving on to the next point, dealing with trauma and unlearning it the hard and only way, which is through it. There's no skirting around the subject. Something that is genuinely traumatizing takes a toll on a person's body, mentality, and it subsequently affects the relationships that you can keep with other people. There are different coping mechanisms people use to survive through trauma, whether it be compartmentalizing, ignoring and showing stoicism or indifference towards the situation or person, crying in a car, shopping until they have a debt equal to a Rolls Royce, binge eating, alcoholism, the list goes on. But in order to step out of that cycle, we need to face it head on. Whether it's a distant memory, a person we see sometimes, or even all the time. The only way through the uncomfortable is sitting in the feeling and recognizing it and then dealing with it the best way that you can. The way that worked best for me to move past my traumas is understanding that I don't have control over other people. I tried my best to empathize with others as much as I could to justify their actions, and maybe to understand where they're coming from. But I'm not that person. I'm not them. I don't know what goes through their mind. I will never fully understand where someone else is coming from because I am not them. It's never a bad thing to use empathy, but you will never be another person but yourself. You will never have control over someone else but yourself. That's why the future is dependent on what you do and how you think from this point on. Gaining control over yourself, though, can cross into victimizing. This is something I wish I didn't have to point out, but it seems kind of necessary because so many people like to claim that every little thing that ever happened to them that inconvenienced them or that they personally didn't like because it didn't benefit or cater to them is traumatizing. But look at the situation from a third person point of view. That's what keeps me grounded and accountable for my mistakes. So you aren't empathizing or putting yourself in the other party's shoes in the situation, and you're not looking at it from your perspective. You're a stranger looking at the situation from the outside in. That's why there are so many posts in the Am I the Asshole Reddit, because people are trying to get outside perspectives on their situation because there's something that's missing for them to understand the situation as a whole. Looking at it like someone who doesn't know anyone in the situation is how you prevent victimizing yourself and looking like an entitled fool that has no accountability or capacity to grow. And we don't want that now, do we, boo? Another point to this is your body keeps the score, and there are ways to work through it. Though I am not a psychiatrist or a therapist, so I can't tell you the best way to handle your trauma, because everyone is different. I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is a long but great read with a lot of anecdotes of people from all different backgrounds. And it basically outlines that there are a lot of ways that people keep onto previous wounds that they never cared for in the moment, and therefore the wound healed into a scar and it lasted forever for a lot of people. But there are gradual ways to work on your mindset to keep you grounded in the moment that prevent you from feeling the same emotions and pain that held you back for so long. Being able to release the past as something you don't have to go through again is something that is difficult to work through on your own. And while it is possible to do it on your own, coming from someone who had to work through their trauma independently because she was broke, food service worker for a majority of her life, it's okay though. It's an easier task if you can confide in a professional or even in a trustworthy adult or reliable friend. To prevent myself from reliving the past and staying stuck in the same cycles over and over again, I practice being mindful and present in the moment, which ties into the next lesson I learned over the past decade. Practicing gratefulness for the mistakes and hardships allowed me to find joy in the present moment and peace instead of loneliness in myself. I'm not saying that this is the one and only way to becoming happy and at peace, but there's definitely more behind this practice that I honestly haven't really found a way to explain yet, but when I find it, I will be sharing more about this part of my journey. The basics of this lesson is taking time to sit in the moment when you're by yourself, allowing yourself to enjoy the peace and quiet in a loud and sometimes overbearing, overstimulating world. Some people practice this mindfulness in the silence, through meditation, through shutting their eyes, not with the intent to fall asleep, but to connect their mind to their body. Meditating, even for 5 minutes, would help me collect myself throughout the days that I worked on my feet, struggling to keep up with serving tables as best as I could. Some days pressure and disappointment of others would get to me, but being in touch with your body gives it the recognition it truly deserves. And it allows you to step into a rhythm that you're more comfortable in instead of falling into a panic when you're expected to show up for other people or to complete this task in a short amount of time. Your mind to body connection is important to the trust you have in yourself and your instincts, which also helps prevent burnout. When you practice this mindfulness to connect to yourself and how your body feels, you gain the ability to delve into the depths of your conscious mind, sorry to sound AI, and get a handle of how you subconsciously handle things. In my case, several years had to pass after the abuse and the trauma and hardship where I finally understood where these lingering emotions and bodily reactions came from. I finally comprehended why I would feel a cool rush in my stomach, pins and needles in my arm, when I thought about the grief and the struggle that I went through. And I only found a sense of normalcy when I sat in that feeling, talking myself through the thoughts, the memories, and bring myself back to the present moment, telling myself that I would never have to go through that again, because I have the power to set boundaries and walk away from anyone and anything. There is so much more that I could say about healing from trauma, but I know I'm not a professional except through my own experience. So if y'all are interested in hearing about my personal experience with healing, I'm happy to share in case it might help someone else on their journey to healing. A life-changing lesson that I learned after being a serial relationship hopper and always seeking attention and approval from somebody while not giving myself the proper love and attention that I deserved. I learned that time alone is the only way you'll understand who you are. Staying single is necessary for a lot of people to find the fundamentals of their personality, their likes and dislikes, the values that they resonate with, the person they want to become in the near future, and just overall fortify their mental aptitude. Being alone doesn't mean that you have to be lonely. It took me a while to be comfortable in my own company, to not overthink and believe that everyone around me is concerned with what I'm doing, or whether me being alone is an indication of whether I'm a tolerable person or not. Other people's opinions start mattering less and less when you start focusing on what you are doing and how you are feeling in the moment. I find myself smiling when the sun comes out from behind the clouds and warms my face while I walk across a grocery store parking lot. I find that food tastes more delicious when I've been wanting and craving this meal, and I just go out to the restaurant by myself, not waiting for someone to come and eat with me. I laugh when I walk through the park and see someone walking their dog that's throwing a fit because the walk went on for 2 steps too long. I loved traveling alone to Japan and other cities in the States, making my own itinerary on my own time. All of these activities that I've done by myself have not only made me grow as an individual, but also allowed for me to find happiness in small things, peace in the mundane, and the capacity to show up for others in my life in a very positive way. I learned to trust myself during this process of doing things on my own. Every time that I wanted to do something for myself, I would show up and do it. I built trust with myself, just like how you would with anyone you meet. A lot of people are worth trusting, but the process of giving a new person in your life trust is through repeated exposure, continuing to show up at events, having conversations to understand each other. Just like how you would build a trust with a friend, it's important for you to build trust with yourself. Having the capability of conversating with yourself, understanding why you think the way that you do, taking steps forward in your growth as a person, and adjusting your actions and behaviors to align with who you want to be in the future. Some people have the ability to moderate their inner dialogue. Some can visualize conversations with themselves. Some can see the words in their heads. All of that is to say that everyone speaks to themselves differently. And having grace with yourself, as you might have with other people, is necessary when you start trusting yourself and eventually learning more about yourself. I have inner dialogue when I journal. I write about my day and how I felt throughout certain events. I get to write down the dreams of the future I have when I'm daydreaming and about any interaction I've had with others so that I can learn what habits and actions I need to apply to achieve my goal, or maybe even communication skills that I need to work on to get my point across. The last thing to note about this last lesson is that it is okay to change. It may seem scary or uncomfortable in the moment to change, but that's how we grow as human beings. We meet people who change our perspective with wisdom, facts, or kindness. We're allowed to have people we look up to and base certain points of our personality or likes and dislikes off of, but make sure you still keep your roots down to the fundamental core that you have been building your whole life. It's okay to listen to other people's opinions. It's okay to share your opinion, but you know what? It's also okay to not listen to other people's opinions, just like how some people may not care to listen to your opinions. While it may or may not be personal, the hope is to share ideas, spread compassion, and live harmoniously as the only consciously subconscious creatures in the entire observable universe. The change can start with one person and then another person, and it builds up, just like how you can change yourself and your own mindset one step at a time, and it builds up to who you want to be. There are so many more lessons that I've learned over the past decade, but these were the most important I learned in the past, honestly, 5 years. I'm turning 30 at the end of the year, and I'll be sharing so many more thoughts and stories, so if you like hearing where your cool auntie comes from and how she views life, subscribe for more. Be patient, learn to love yourself and your own company, and stand up for your values while respecting others. Thank y'all for listening and watching. I hope y'all have had a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you next Monday, boos.